Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Verosint Live. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Lori Bainborough. I'm the host for this afternoon. And our topic today is writing rules, how to leverage templates or customize with ease. Our experts on the matter are our speakers today, our co-founder and CTO, Mark Batchelor, and our VP of Product, Travis Favaron. And without further ado, Travis, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. So, rules, how to leverage templates, customize with ease. So we're going to talk about a few things, what rules are used for, and what they mean, what rule templates are versus custom rules, and then Mark is going to take us through some demos so we can see how this actually looks in the product itself. So what are rules for anyways? The rules engine is how you ask questions of your identity graph inside of Verosint. So we've talked before, but I'll reiterate in case this is your first time here. You send identity events into Verosint, and we build an identity graph based on those events. These are things that happen to your identity flows, and that then gets enriched with OSINT data, and we make all of that available to you in rules. So you can ask questions of it in real time to figure out what you need to do. And then the second bullet point here, automate what should happen. So you get to ask questions and then automate. And this is how you actually get to the prevention side of fraud prevention and discovery. And then templates versus custom rules. So templates are a great way to get started quickly. We have a number of different templates for a variety of different use cases to demonstrate different ways you can use the signals that exist, or allow you to borrow from the expertise we have on staff around how to use signals to stop fraud. Or you can design things to your exact needs. So we have the ability to write custom expressions with access to all of the signal data that you have in your identity graph, and to even write custom outcomes and reasons so you can build that exact specific use case for your particular business or business problem. All right. Mark, did I forget anything before we turn it over to a live demo?
The only thing that, well, no, you didn't forget anything. I think we're in good shape. I can demo.
Awesome. Awesome. Take it away.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, folks. There we go. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, it looks like we can.
All right. Do I need to zoom in or anything? Am I good? We'll go with that.
I think we're good right there. Yep.
Okay, so let me tell you what we got here. This is just a demo tenant in our UI. And what I have is I have an identity graph here. Sorry, I'm clicking on all the wrong things. I have an identity graph here. There I've created some SignalPrints and populated my graph over time. I may be doing it in real time. Generally this is going to be real time. In my case, I've just got a static set of events that I've loaded. And each one of these things has been enriched with OSINT data of some sort. So for phone number, email address, that type of thing. If I go over really quick, just to show this to you, I'm going to go over to our demo tenant. And on our demo tenant, I'll show you that data. So here's our SignalPrint data on our demo tenant. So if I go look at, example, I'll go look at one of these accounts. You can see that this account's been tagged with impossible travel. It's been a new print and account sharing. But if I go through and look at each one of these things, I can see that this is the email address that's associated with this account. The signals that it owns, it's got age for the domain, it's got when the domain was registered, and then extra signals. So this happens to be a free email provider, optusnet.com.au. If I look at the IP addresses that are associated with it, I can see that the location data is along with it. It's also known hosted IP address. That means it's out of a hosting provider like an Amazon or Google or something like that. It's also a known proxy. And then I also know the user agent that's involved with this particular IP address. And then I can look at the device itself. I can look at the email again, and I can see the locations that it's come from. So point behind showing you this is that this is the OSINT data that we attach to prints as they flow into our system, right? Now that I've got this data, and I can come out and look at some other ones as well, just to show you what's available. But now that I've got this data, I'm gonna zoom in. There we go. Here's another free provider, I believe. Yep. And IP addresses. This one happens to be in France or London. In this case, that's going to be France. Devices, email, and if I have a phone number, we've also got data on those phone numbers. So again, data's been sent in. We've created prints for these things. We've associated it with other objects. We've been watching it over time. But now that's great. I've created prints. That's where these rules come into play next. Is now I want to ask questions about these things that are in my identity graph. That's where we get rules. So I'm actually going to switch over to my tenant instead of the demo tenant, so I can edit some rules. So I'm back on my own tenant here. And I've created some rules of my own, but I'm going to start by showing you our templates first. So if you come up here to add rule, I can choose to create a new one. I can import one that I've exported in the past for backup purposes, or if I want to move right from one tenant to another. Or I can choose from one of our templates. So I could use the template verbatim, or I could use the template as a starting point for my own rule set, right? And so in this case, we'll just use a simple one to begin with. Let's look to see if the email address is a disposable email address. So I'm going to click on use template, and it's going to create a template for me, or it's going to create a rule set. And I'm going to go look at the rules that it created just to explain how a rule works. So first and foremost, you've got your rule name, and then the expression that's going to be evaluated when you run this rule. So in this case, we're asking the question, does this thing have the email signal? So is this an email? And is the email signal of the type disposable? So on the right-hand side, you can see all the signals that we make available for email address right now. We're always adding more, changing things around, but as it stands, these are what we have at the moment. And you can see that I've got this disposable tag right here. So identifies the time and days. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Disposable. Determines if an email is temporarily and expires after a certain period of time. And then what do I want to have? What do I want to return to me when I ask the question, does this email have the signal disposable? In this case, I want to return an outcome of deny. And then on my application, what I would do is I'd take that outcome and I'd do whatever deny means in my application. I could choose to allow. I could choose to send it off for a proofing event. I could choose to send it off for a challenge, or I could choose to say whatever I want, right? And then I could use that outcome in my application to do whatever I want, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and set this back to deny. There we go. And then we also give a reason. So whatever the reason is, you can type this out here, and we'll give back, this is a disposable email address. So the response you get back is, you ask the question, is this a disposable email address? And we say, in this case, if it's yes, then we say, deny is your outcome. And the reason was this was a disposable email address. If it's not, then we give a default outcome. In this case, we give a default outcome of allow. Does that make sense so far, Travis? So far, so good?
Yes, I think so.
All right. So I'm actually going to change this rule to make it something a little easier to do. So I'm actually going to change this from signals.email.disposable to signals.email.free. And so what this is going to do is it's going to look for any free email provider. So Google, Gmail or Yahoo or something like that. I did this because it's just easier. It's just easier to demo. One thing I failed to mention is on these expressions use common expression language. Google put it out. It's really simple to write one of these expressions. And you can click here to find out more about CEL in general. And you can just Google for common expression language and it'll tell you everything you want to know about it. It's simple. It's easy to use. So in my case, I just changed this to signals.email.free. That's one of the signals we make available here. And I'm actually going to go to the evaluate tab. And in this case, I'm going to evaluate, I don't know, I'm going to evaluate mark@gmail.com. And let's do evaluate on that. And you can see that I got back a deny. And I got back a deny because it says it's a disposable email, right? I'm going to go back to my rule because I just realized that my reason is no longer valid if I'm doing this for free. I'm going to change this to free email provider is not allowed. All right. And then we'll go back to evaluate that again. And then now you can see that I got back an outcome of deny, which I was expecting, and I got back deny, free email provider is not allowed. Now, if I was going to do this against something else, so maybe I'll do this at verosint.com and evaluate that, I get back allow, and it was allowed because no rules were applied. Okay. So that's what a simple rule looks like. Yeah, hopefully you get the gist of how it works. I can do that for emails, IPs, phones, and I can even ask user agent questions. So let's get a little more complicated and go look at one of the rules that I've put together. So what I was attempting to do with these rules is just kind of put together what I consider to be ATO or account takeover indicators for in general, and then also for specific things like IPs and phone numbers. So let's look at this general one. So if I go look at this, there's a couple of different things that are happening in here, and this is all for email in this case. The first thing to note is when you have multiple rules in a rule set, they run in order. So I'm going to run the first rule, and if it doesn't fire, I'm going to do the second rule. If it doesn't fire, the third rule, and so on until I get all the way to a default outcome. If none of the rules fire, we're going to give back a default outcome. So when you're building complex rule sets, it's important to put your most egregious things at the top and lesser problems at the bottom. So if you're making a big monolithic set like this, that's the way to do it. So what I did is the first question I asked here is, on an email address and an IP address, so I have to send both things into this rule. On an email address and an IP address, if the Verosint risk score is greater than 50, go ahead and I want to send them for an ID proofing event, which means they're super sketchy. I want to send them off to do document verification for a driver's license or something like that. If that one didn't fire, the next thing I ask is, well, have they done impossible travel? So, were they in London 5 minutes ago and now they're in Chicago and they're not on a VPN? If that's true, then I want to challenge them. I want to challenge them for MFA in this case. So I want them to do more authentication. Next thing I ask is the email or the IP address known to be malicious? If so, go for an ID proofing event. Is it known to be the IP address known to be a bot or a Tor node? If so, challenge them for MFA. And then these are some of our own tags. So in the SignalPrint UI, you saw account sharing in multiple accounts. These are things we detect based off of what we see. And is this account associated with an account sharing network or associated with multiple other accounts? If so, challenge them for MFA. So this one might be something like the Netflix use case, for example, where my daughter in college is using my Netflix account. It's going to challenge her for MFA when she authenticates, and I'm going to get that MFA. So I know that it's happening and she can't just use it. That's what this might take into account. Moving through here, domain indicators. Is this a known risky top-level domain? Has it been less than 60 days since the domain for the email address was registered? If so, send back the outcome of possible account takeover, right? With a reason for a possible account takeover. And then you get the rest of it. So generic and disposable. Here's an interesting one. Does this email domain, does it have a properly set up mail server and domain? So does it have a valid A record? Does it have a valid DNS server? Is it a valid ICANN suffix? Does it use SPF? Does it have a valid mail exchanger? If one of those things isn't true, it could be a possible ATO because it's not a properly set up domain. And then lastly, free email provider, challenge them. If none of these things fire, go ahead and do an allow. And so this is just an example of how to make a complex rule set, all the way down to you could make really simple ones all the way to really complicated ones. Here's an example of ones for just IP addresses, ones that look for masking and location, bots and malicious, deny lists, risk scores. So yeah, just wanted to kind of call out what each one of these are, and then I can evaluate all along the way. So, you know, this may fail. It is a live demo. Let's see, because I don't have a good IP address. I'm going to evaluate Google's DNS server. Let's see what it does. Oh, possible ATO. It's triggered more than one signal. Oh, possible location and address masking. So my guess is that this particular IP address is also either a proxy server.
Yeah, some hosted proxy flag or something.
Yeah, it's going to have a hosted proxy flag, or it definitely would be hosted. So yeah, you can evaluate whatever you want to evaluate here in general.
And the great part about that evaluation tab is it lets you see what would possibly happen if you were to change that rule and implement it in production. So you can see ahead of time if I've got a known IP address that I want to block or a known email address I don't want to block, you can ensure that what you're expecting to happen is going to happen.
Correct. The next thing to note about rules is I can export my rule sets and save them off if I want to. So if I want to move them from one tenant to another, for example. But there's two things to note when you're making a call to one of our rules. You need two things. You need three things. You need the data set that the rule is calling for. So email, IP address, phone number, user agent, any combination depending on what the rule set requires. You need your API key, your Verosint API key, and that can be copied here from the copy API key on the clipboard, or you can get it here. Just go to API keys and you can copy it here. The other thing you need is the UUID, or the unique identifier of the rule you want to run. So when I run a rule, I pass it the data, I pass it my API key, and I pass our API this string that says run this rule with this data as this customer, right? And you need all three of those things in order to run a rule in general. Now, Travis just mentioned that you could use our evaluation for each one of these rules to evaluate what could happen. You can also use our CLI tool to do the same thing, our command line interface, and we'll go over this in more detail probably in another one of these sessions. The CLI. Just know that I could export all my users from somewhere if I want, and then I could run them all against a rule set, and then save that output to a CSV, for example, or an LDIF, generally a CSV in this case, pull it into Excel and see what would have happened. So if I'm going to go and implement, if I go back here and I'm going to suddenly say that, hey, next Saturday, I'm going to turn on this ATO indicators rule for my entire Auth0 tenant, for example, for all my new users, what's going to happen when I do that? What outcome will generally happen, and you'll know beforehand before you ever implement it what would happen just by using our CLR tool to do it. You could also call our API or use Postman or something in the same way, but we make this tool available to run rules and get outcomes and ingest SignalPrints and do everything you need to do from one place as well. What am I missing here, Travis? This is kind of the rules world.
Yeah, if you want to go back to the creating the query expression editor, I wanted to point out one other thing on just different types of signals. So we have a number of signals, email, IP, phone, that are OSINT generated. A lot of the things we've been talking about. We also have the ability, you saw the graph is relational, right? It knows what's connected to what. So down in the SignalPrint section, you can see things like how many accounts are connected to the thing I'm currently talking to you about. How many degrees away is a connection? So a use case for this is, let's say you have a problem with, you run a platform or a marketplace and you need to ban users because they break the terms of service, or spouting abusive language, or abusing the platform in some way, and you've banned them. Well, you ban them, you mark their account as banned, and they decide, all right, I'm going to go sign up for a new account because I want to continue doing whatever I want to do. It can be hard to detect that, but one of the benefits is we can actually connect those two together through their signal print, those two accounts together through the signal print, and you can ask the question of rules. Is the user I'm currently talking to connected within 1 or 2 or 3 degrees to a banned user? And if they are, then you can deny the registration. You could straight up, deny the login, or you could simply just, put a lot of friction in their way to reduce and make it more costly for them to do whatever they're trying to do. So I wanted to just point out that, yes, there's all of the OSINT signal data, which can be very, very helpful. There's also access to all the graph data as well. These are similar things that go into the labeling process that we do on your behalf to create things like multi-accounts and account sharing. So if you wanted to make your own versions of certain types of, kind of broad labels, if you will, this same data is accessible to you in the rule system.
Very good point. And not only is the data available to you to make, those types of decisions, the same data that we use to create those decisions in some cases are also available. So multiple accounts is available. I can do things like on the prints, is this a new print? So if it's a new print, that's probably a new person. Think of that as the first time you've seen that person. Put up whatever type of friction you're going to put up. So very good points. I can get super granular with what I'm doing with the actual print events, but I can also get super granular with just in general what I'm doing with it. Let's see here. There's more events. This is the risk score one here. And then you'll find as we go forward that we're adding stuff to this all the time. So new signals, new ways to interact with the prints, just in general. So there's a bunch of interesting things we can do with this. So great point, Travis.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else to add. The last thing, the one thing I did forget to mention was 2 things. If I go, just to show you how this works, if I go and create a blank rule, it's going to have some pre-filled out stuff in here as an example, right? But if I just go over here on the right-hand side and say, let's pick on IP addresses. Let's say, is it going to be a bot or crawler? If I just click on it, it automatically fills out the expression for me here on the left-hand side. But it also does type ahead checking. So if I get to say, is it a crawler or signals dot, you can see that it automatically fills these out for me. So I can choose Tor. And it syntax checks you the entire time. So it's not going to let you accidentally create a poor expression. It'll be syntactically correct either way. So just wanted to mention.
We should point out on the doc site. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Travis. Go ahead.
I was going to say the doc site also has the same list of all of these signals with their definitions. So if you're looking for something in particular, down on the guides and then the bottom left-hand side, it's one of the last links there, signal definitions. If you're looking for something in particular and you want to just be able to do a quick search, this is a great place to search. Same data that you would see in those tooltips without the need to open and hover on as many of the things. You could scroll down, jump to different areas, see all the different signals we have. And anytime we add signals, this automatically gets updated as well. So you'll see all of that stuff there.
Yep. Last thing I was going to mention is that if you have a need to, it's kind of, I won't call it hacky, but it's a little, not a lot of reason to do it. But if you did have a reason to send data back to your API, you make a call to us and we're going to send you an outcome and a reason. If you need more than just an outcome and like a static reason, you can, using this format, send back the value of that signal to your application. So in this case, in this banned countries one, we were looking to see if it was a banned country, and then the reason response we give back will include the country code of the signal that fired, right? So I could also do, I don't know, I could do anything I want in this case, signals.ip.vpn, and we'll send back true or false in that as well. So you can get some of that back if you need it. Not something that we recommend doing a lot of, but in a lot of cases it helps for debugging. So
yeah, debugging, or we've seen it also used from some customers in with their customer support team. So not solely something you would tell the end user, like, hey, we're denying you because of this exact reason, and then have them be able to play cat and mouse and go around that. But giving your customer support team this login for this user was denied because they came from this particular situation, and then they can use their judgment on how to disclose that information if someone was to contact support and be confused on why they couldn't log in. It's actually a great way to potentially combat social engineering, giving your support team knowledge of the fact that this was denied for a specific and obvious reason, versus just letting them try and troubleshoot on their own. So
exactly.
Lots of good use cases for the reason field there.
Yep. I guess lastly, just you could also bulk export your entire rule set. So if you need to back it up again and move it around, you can bulk export. It's all pretty straightforward. If I was to leave you with anything, it's that our SignalPrint and identity graph platform is about ingesting and decorating things, right? So we're ingesting events, we're decorating them with OSINT and things we've discovered. So things like multiple account and that type of thing. How far is it from the next person? That type of thing. The rules engine again is about asking questions, and the meat of how you implement us is to start printing, discover what your problems are, and then start building rules to negate those problems so that we run them in real time. And that's the intent of our platform overall. That's rules. Did I miss anything?
No, I think at this point we can just thank everyone for joining. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you learned something. And the last thing I'll leave you with is we do offer a free trial if you want to get in and play around with these rules yourself, evaluate what your IP address or your email address might return back on a rule that you were designing. You can go to verosint.com/free trial, and that'll lead you through the sign up flow there to go in and play around and see all the different features of our fully featured free trial.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark and Travis, for walking us through how to create these rules and showing us how straightforward it is. That is our time for today. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.